You're listening to the Ask Drone U podcast. You ask, we answer your drone questions. Whether you're here to turn your passion into profit or you simply fly for fun. We're a community of learners and teachers who aspire to achieve greatness. We are
Drone U.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Rob. This is Douglas Mock from Lake Elsinore, California. Paul, I love your lofty enthusiasm and passion. Rob, you offset Paul awesomely with your grounded levelness and the questions that you ask to get really on point. I appreciate everything you guys have been doing, and I'm learning a lot. As a matter of fact, I have a question from a podcast that you guys did about 4 months ago regarding somebody submitted a question about being able to pan the drone as you gain height. And you mentioned the Litchi app. My question is this. I have been investigating different apps, and I agree with Paul 100%. You need to know how to fly this drone and fly it well on the sticks before you start getting into a lot of the automated features that these programs can offer. Who knows what situations you can run into where you need to take control and take control fast. So I'm a total believer and supporter in that. However, there are situations, or I would imagine moments, where the maneuver you need to accomplish is too complicated, especially if you're going to be using a P4P, which I am. So my question is, you guys spoken about the Litchi app, but I haven't heard you mention anything about Autopilot. And I'm wondering if you guys have any experience or information regarding the two apps, and how helpful one is over the other when it comes to control of the drone. Or is there a difference? I would love to hear what you guys have to say about that. Thanks again. Also, I watch your podcast on YouTube. I have subscribed, and you guys are awesome. Thank you.
Doug, you're awesome. Thank you for the question. 2 questions in a row, by the way, from Doug.
wow.
So thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. 2 good questions, obviously, to have them on the show. And thanks for subscribing, guys. If you haven't done that, do that for us. It's very, very helpful. It's good for the industry as we get more people educated about how to do things the right way. And so you can really help out the industry by subscribing. So please do it.
Definitely. You can subscribe on iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts, or watch us on YouTube, and then you can actually measure the reflectivity of the studio lights on Rob's head.
Ooh, just wear your shades.
All right, I'm just gonna go for this one.
Should we do a like a label warning?
You want to give them a little warning, like a content warning, really quick?
Paul's passionate about this subject.
Okay. To answer his question, Litchi or Autopilot, and to give a fair review of those 2 apps and what is better to use, I'm not going to go through, because like he said in his question, he realizes that, hey, you've got to be a really good pilot, and you've got to be able to do these things. But I really want to know, which app is better for. Go ahead.
There was one difference that you said was pretty profound that you had mentioned prior to going on air.
If I understand it, Litchi is the only one that can actually do match moves. So you can set flight paths and you can set camera motions, and then set both of them and do them over and over again, which is pretty cool if you're doing super, super complex stuff. And you have variables that make it virtually impossible to get that shot. Now, that being said, I'm a traditionalist. And for good reason, because every traditionalist that I know is at the very top of this industry.
Sure.
And I don't know anyone who has ever successfully run a business on automating these flight movements. And I say that because, if he's wondering which is better, Litchi or Autopilot, I'm sure Litchi's better. But I don't think that anyone should rest on their morals, as they say, or rest on the assumption that this app is something that you can build a system on to incorporate in your business to deliver something to a client. I think that if you have the idea and the impression that you can just set particular flight moves and create something that is artistic and will provide value. I think if you think you can build a business on, just doing autonomous motions to deliver that, you're never going to build a successful business.
Right.
You're never going to build a successful business unless you're like the photo van guys and you are charging $200 a house to fly it, and you literally have pre-programmed the entire flight moves, and you're just doing the same thing on each house over and over again. I can understand that. But what happens if there's a firmware update and all of a sudden you can't move the camera the same way anymore? And here's the example for that, Rob. Sorry to interrupt you. I know you're about to interrupt me, but I'm going to stop you. Recently, when they updated the Inspire 1 firmware, because of now the Inspire 2 is out, they took away the ability to change your C2 button for camera free and camera follow on the Inspire 1. Why is that important? Well, if I'm using apps to do these complex camera motions, which you control with your finger, you do the same thing with an Inspire 1. You can control the camera with your finger. That button resets the camera to forward. That way you know where the drone is in space because you're using the camera in space. Well, no longer can you do that. You can't set it to free and follow or gimbal yaw reset. You can't do that anymore. It's just, you can't do it.
Okay.
So the fact that I can no longer create these beautiful cinematic motions and then go back to normal and do it all over again is a problem. That's just one little change they did in firmware. Now imagine if for whatever reason you get the Inspire 2, the Phantom 4 Pro, and all of a sudden Litchi doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
How are you going to get those autonomous movements? How are you going to build a business off of autonomous movements when you're trying to create a competitive advantage? And the best way to really do that is to be the best pilot you can and practice every day and nail these complex cinematic moves because no one else can. The reason that pilots get these really cool complex jobs is because of their ability to fly, not their ability to press buttons on an AM app.
Hallelujah. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I don't know, and I think you're kind of speaking to the audience.
Well, I'm just trying to say that, look, guys, you can compare these two things, but I'm trying to take a more macro view on the fact that you cannot create a successful business if you are going to trust an app to get camera motions for you.
Well, and I think to say you cannot might be a little bit strong. There are probably models that you could use. So,
and
for
that's
example,
why I brought up the real estate, because that is a good model that you could use, but you're never going to be happy.
Well, potentially not. If your happiness is driven by actually being the pilot, what that generates is a very volume-based business that ultimately you're going to have to run and you're not going to get to fly. Because it's so volume driven, you're going to have other pilots flying for you.
Which is why it's so important at the beginning of your business to ask, what do you want?
Absolutely. And why, which is something that we're actually going to talk about in our business course, is your why.
RPM. What's the reason? What's the purpose? And what's the method that you're going to get there?
Right. So anyways, that's the issue on that photo van example. And I agree with you because a lot of these folks that are doing this are doing it because we hear it all the time. I love to fly. I'm really, really passionate about it. It's so much fun. And if I can earn money doing what I love, that's awesome. But going into that model, that's not going to work over long term.
Exactly, because this system of you doing the same cinematic motions over and over on real estate, it's not going to be enriching to your life.
Probably not.
It's just going to be like an extension of the corporate life in the real world, and you're dealing with people who are hard to deal with all the time.
Absolutely. But you know what? I've actually heard from several folks who are more interested in building an empire, not necessarily in piloting a drone, and they just see the drone industry as a really great avenue to do so. So maybe for them, it's a whole different analysis and it makes sense for them.
True.
But what I'm curious about is when Doug used the word, there might be complex maneuvers for which an app might be useful or more beneficial even than human fingers on the sticks. Is there any part of that you could see being legitimate?
Yeah, in Litchi.
No, but I mean, is there anything where you would say it is so complex that you would be better off using an app?
No, because some of the most complex motions, which Ilker and I are producing another. So we have, in the Drone U, there's like the Don't Crash course, which the new Mavic Pro one's about to go out. And then there's the advanced, Advanced Aerial Cinematography. And it goes through some really advanced motions. And I'm doing a new class called Professional Cinematography, where it's the most advanced camera tricks, camera movements that you can do on a drone. And in fact, I give a lot of the examples on Survivor, the show, because you're not going to find a more complex cinematic move than on that show. And I give the example of when they're showcasing the exercises and the challenges. That's the aerials I'm talking about.
Right.
But in this new class, I'm doing this shot where it's a 180-degree reveal with changing elevation while doing an orbit. So think of it like a horseshoe movement as far as the orbit goes, but the camera is tilting up as you're de-elevating and moving around the subject at the same time. Now, this is something you can't do because it's not possible whether you're using the orbit. It's not possible whether you're using Litchi. So it's more complex than what the applications can do.
Understand.
So my point in saying that is that can you do complex motions in an app? Yes, but the difficulty therein is going to be limited by the ability of the app to do the motion. And most of the most complex motions you couldn't even do on an app.
At this point, that could change in the future with updates to those apps, but we'll see. So even something like, I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate, helping people understand. What about something like, I don't know.
Which, by the way, I love.
A cell tower inspection.
Mm-hmm. What about it?
Maybe that gets complex because you're needing to get so close to it. Is that something that you might use an app for?
I think that's a perfect example of something you would use an app for, and I think that's why you led me down this path, because in the artistic side of this industry, there's no way that autonomous movements can give you a business. Now, can autonomous movements provide a system for certain industrial inspections? Yes, but I will say this, and I will say this, just please listen. It is so important that your people, if you hire people to do autonomous services for your business, they know how to do emergency maneuvers. They know how to control a drone when it is descending out of control. I know that sounds crazy, but it is totally plausible. So if you hire people to do autonomous movements, just make sure that they are trained through and through, okay?
Which Doug alluded to.
Yes. Now, that being said, the cell tower is a perfect example of something, of a service that could use an autonomous movement, like the orbit, right? Because you're trying to zoom in really tight, you're trying to get a serial number, you're trying to move super, super slowly. That's a great way to do it.
Interesting, but obviously staying very connected to that controller in case something goes awry.
And I mean, that's the question, right?
Yeah.
If a lot of people say, okay, well, I'm going to just do this autonomously, and I look at them square in the eye like I'm looking at you, Rob, in those deep blue eyes of yours. and I'll ask you, if you were flying a cell tower right now, and you had a communications loss, an interference, and you had a flyaway, or the drone was just simply going into some weird auto land mode, do you know how to take over control from that, regain control, and land it to the ground? There is one specific sequence of buttons to do that. Do you know how to do that?
Well, number one, it's going to depend on the drone, right? I mean, you're going to...
Let's say DJI, because it's all the same on DJI. Let's say it's DJI from the Phantom 3.
You're asking the wrong person, because I would not be doing that job at this point in the first place. I know it has to do with the mode and going in and out of the modes.
That's true. Yeah. So it's a sequence between flight modes.
Correct.
But if you ask someone that and if they can't look you square in the eye for 10 seconds and give you an answer, like they're looking all over the place, like, oh, I know this one. Like, that's what's going to happen on a crash. Oh, I know this one. What do I do? Boom, it's gone. And it's dead. Yeah. And
potentially a lot of damage to the infrastructure that you're checking out.
Exactly my point, the liability, which is why autonomous features is not a good thing all around. It's just not good. Because let's say you send some guy out to do a cell phone tower inspection, he does it, and all of a sudden the drone is like, oh, critical battery warning, landing. Like, okay, what's the fastest way you can bring it down? Because for whatever reason, it's had a voltage drop, and you only have 15 seconds to bring this bird down. You cannot elevate up whatsoever. How are you going to get it out of the autonomous mode and bring it down fast? If the person can't answer in 10 seconds, how are they going to react while they're controlling the bird?
Right.
Because my answer would be flip the flight modes, bring it down in a tornado pattern, make sure the landing gear is down and bring it right over my head so I can catch grab it.
Which, by the way, bringing it down in a tornado pattern isn't easy. So, I mean, that in and of itself is something that you have to practice and get good at and understand how to do that in a pinch. Because I've tried it.
It's funny.
I
know the motion like right here.
You do because you've done it so many times. But on Friday Fly Day, I'll try it. And I'm like, God, it's not working. So
I'll say the biggest difficulty is trying to keep the cone small. So you're trying to keep those, and you have to introduce pitch. And a lot of people don't understand that when you're trying to create a tighter circle, you got to
go down.
Forward.
Right?
I know it sounds weird, but it's actually forward, believe it or not. So like you said, it's hard, you know? And so for you guys out there who are making these business decisions, this is why it's so important to know the nuances
So maybe
You
the
know?
apps are for fun, like maybe, I don't know, the follow me kind of stuff. That's, you can go out, ride your bike and whatever.
You don't want to hear my honest opinion of what the apps are for.
And I don't know, maybe everybody else does.
I'm just going to say it's
another
inappropriate for the show.
Okay. On that note, anything else to say to Doug?
I think the nice thing is useless.
That's fair.
And there are many reasons for that. And one of them is, there are some insurance agencies out there that rate you on how many hours you have. There's only one broker that I know of right now that does this. But when you use those other apps, you're not logging data. Mm-hmm. And, for the first time ever, I heard of someone getting ramp checked, by the way, this weekend, flying at Ultra Music Festival down in Miami. Yeah, Christy Foster, congratulations, by the way. I've been friends with her for a while on Facebook, but she was working that gig. And it's funny because there are a lot of people, I'm realizing there are a lot of drone businesses that have business owners and then a very specific drone person. If you want to be intimate with your business, I would say be intimate with the technology you're using. So,
absolutely.
And Christy is definitely intimate with that technology, and she does a good job. So
awesome.
That's good for her.
Very cool.
Goes to show you another girl in the drone industry making waves.
Love it.
I love it too. This whole gender thing. Don't let anything get in your way, including if anyone gives you a hard time for gender, ethnicity, whatever it is. Let your skill, let your value speak for itself, and silence those people with action. That's all I got to say.
Absolutely. Here.
So
well said.
On that bombshell of platitudes, again, for me, I'm sorry. That is going to do it for us today. My name is Paul.
My name is Rob.
And this is Ask Drone You.